myth. I'll take out a 30-year mortgage and pay extra on it. I promise, I promise, I promise. I'll pay it like a 15. Truth is, life happens and something else will always seem more important. Never take out more, ever more than a 15-year fixed rate mortgage, and never take out more than a fourth of your take-home pay in a payment. Stay away from these adjustable rates, stay away from these balloon mortgages, stay away from these ARMs. We're going to cover that in detail. But let's look at the 15 versus the 30 for a second. A 15-year mortgage on a $225,000 mortgage at 6% has a payment on a 30-year of $1,349. On a 15-year has an $1,899 payment. That's a difference of $550. But here's what happens. When you pay 30 years of $1,349 a month, you pay for the $225,000 $485,000. When you pay 15 years of $1,899 a month, you pay $341,000 for that $225,000. So when you do the 15-year mortgage, you save yourself $143,874. This is a lot of money. And you save yourself 15 years in bondage, because you know what I figured out? 15-year mortgages, they always pay off in 15 years or less. 30-year mortgages that I promise I'm going to pay sooner, don't always do it. As a matter of fact, most of the time they don't, because stuff comes up like the transmission goes out or we got to buy a prom dress. There's always a little bit of life happening in our budget, isn't there? And the first thing to go is the pay an extra routine is the first thing to go in the budget. So that is a myth. Don't take out a 30 and think you're going to pay it like a 15.
Set up a savings plan early and put money aside so you've got a good down payment. The more you pay down on the loan on the front, the better off you're going to be over the life of that loan. And pay that loan off as quickly as you can. Make a couple of extra payments over the life of the loan. You'll be so surprised at what that will save you on the interest charges.
You should never take out an adjustable rate mortgage, and you should never take out a balloon, regardless of how long you're going to live in the home. Number one, you don't know how long you're going to live in the home. Life changes. Sometimes people get married, they have kids, they lose their job, they end up having to stay in that home that they didn't plan to stay in for whatever reason. Maybe they just decide they get to stay in that home because they like it, but then that mortgage can force you to have to move, because that balloon comes due, meaning the whole balance comes due, and if you don't have the credit because you just lost your job, you can't keep the house. You got to sell it to avoid being foreclosed on. Same thing with the adjustable rate mortgage. It can adjust up and drive you out of the house. And so you think you're going to be moving? Well, the answer is you're probably going to be moving because you did a stupid kind of mortgage. Never do an adjustable rate, never do a balloon. Myth, it's wise to take out an adjustable rate mortgage or a balloon mortgage because that's all I can qualify for. And besides that, I'm going to be moving anyway. Truth, you will be moving when they foreclose. See, what you've got to think about is this. The adjustable rate mortgage started in the early 1980s when interest rates on fixed rate mortgages went to 17, 18, and 19%. I was selling real estate, started selling real estate in 1978. And we were selling real estate in the early 80s in the Jimmy Carter era, and the rates went just through the roof. And we were sitting there with 17.5% and 18% fixed rates. And so we started seeing these new adjustable rate mortgages, which were cheaper. They were like 1 or 2 or 3% even, less. And man, I mean, 15% looks good in an 18% world, doesn't it? Or 12% looks really good in a 16% world. And that's what the world we were operating in. And so we were in the real estate business, we were all like, yeah, anything to get the rate down, right? But what we started understanding and discovering over the years is this. Mortgage companies, when they do a fixed rate loan, or a bank that does a fixed rate loan at, say, 6%, 7%, if they have several $100 million that they are committed to receive only 6% on, or only 7% on. And then if rates go up, in order to attract people to deposit on money markets, they may have to pay more out on savings accounts than they're receiving in on these mortgages. Banks don't like it going that way. They want to pay out less than they're receiving in. They want to pay out 2% and get 7% in, don't they? And when it goes the other way, it's called disintermediation. Well, when that happened in the 80s, it happened so big that it caused the savings and loan industry to fail. You thought it was fraud, and you thought it was all the news stories and everything that came out. The actual statistics were that 12.5% of the S&Ls that failed due to fraud. The rest of them failed. Disintermediation got them, because their money markets were at 12%, and they had hundreds of millions of dollars of loans laying down in here from the early 70s at 5, 6, 7, 8%. And they got upside down on their own deal. Well, the adjustable rate came out so that the next time these rates go up, that at least a bunch of their mortgages will go up as the rates go up. So the adjustable rate mortgage is not here for you. The adjustable rate mortgage is here to keep the bank from losing money in an increasing interest rate environment. It transfers the risk of higher interest rates to you. That's what it's for. So why do we do the 30-year mortgage? Why do we do the adjustable rate mortgage? Why do we do all of these things? Well, why don't we, if we have a 30-year mortgage, why do we have a 30-year mortgage? Why don't we have a 42-year mortgage? Why don't we have a 27-year mortgage? Where'd 30 come from? What's the magic number? Nobody seems to know. I've researched it for years. You know, the 40-year mortgages, everybody talks about it, but it never really happens. 20-year mortgages, talk about it, but it never happens. 15s have become popular as rates have come down, and people like me, consumer advocates, have pushed them. But the 30-year mortgage is still the standard in the business, isn't it? The adjustable rate mortgage is still the standard in the business. Why is it that it's that way? Why do we go that way all the time with our mentality? Nobody seems to know. It's kind of like the story Zig Ziglar tells. One time when he was selling, he won a sales contest, and the prize for winning the sales contest was a prize country ham. Now, Zig is from Mississippi, and a prize country ham's about as good as it gets. He and I have become friends, and I got to tell you, he loved that ham. I can promise you he did. And he came home, and he took that ham, and he took it in the kitchen, and he handed it to his wife, Jean, and she immediately cut the end off of it and put it in a pan and began to bake it. This is a story he tells in his seminars all the time. And he said, "Why did you cut the end off my prize ham?" And she said, "Well, that's how you bake them." And he said, "No, it's not. You bake the whole thing." She said, "Well, no, you cut the end off. That's what my mama always did." And he said, "Well, why did your mama do it?" "Well, I don't know. Let's call Mama and ask her." So they call Mama and ask her, "Mama, why do we cut the end off the ham?" "Well, I don't know. My mama always did it." "Well, let's get her on a conference call." So they get Granny on a conference call. They're all sitting there. "Granny, I cut the end off the ham. Zig says I shouldn't have done that. Mom says she always did it, and because you always did it. I always did it because she always did it. Nobody knows why we do this. Why did you cut the end off the ham?" She said, "Well, I don't know why you two are doing it, but my pan was too short." So why we take out a 30-year mortgage? We don't know. Somebody one time decided it was a good idea, and I suspect it was a banker. Something to think about. So, I'll take out an adjustable rate mortgage or a balloon? No, I don't think so. I think instead we will get rid of that particular myth.
What are the general types of mortgages?
Well, there is a VA mortgage, which is guaranteed by the government, and qualified veterans and active duty personnel can take that type of a mortgage. The second would be a conventional. That's what you're going to find most in the marketplace. It is typically a 20% down payment. It is difficult to qualify, and strict guidelines on that, much stricter than the FHA. FHA is guaranteed by the government. It's typically a little easier to get that type of a loan, so it's pretty attractive for young college student people just getting out of college, young marrieds. It is very attractive because it is simpler to get.
Why is it more simple to get?
The qualification standards. The amount you can borrow is up to 90%, 97% of the home value itself. The government makes it very attractive to take on those loans, and it makes it much easier for someone who's not ready, really, even though they've been qualified, they're truly not, to go ahead and take a loan when they're not ready, and that home becomes a curse instead of the blessing that you want it to be.
So which one would you recommend?
You know, if you're a veteran and you've served our country, obviously going with a VA loan, you're going to have some perks and benefits, as well you should. With FHA, obviously, for some people may not have enough to put down or have some criteria. For example, a single mom may not be able to have the 20%, but based on her income, she doesn't have debt, she's saved up some money, and she may not have the 20%, so FHA may be the way for her to go. But for people that do have a down payment, I'd say conventional is definitely the way to go. Stay with the 15-year fixed, no further, fixed rate mortgage.
When I decided to buy a house, the realtor told me on my first house, you should buy the biggest house you can afford. Even if it's a stretch, you should just get as much of a mortgage as you can, because houses only go up in value, and you'll be glad you did later.
When my two boys were in 1st and 3rd grade, I became a single mom. As time went on, of course, the boys grew up and things kept getting more and more expensive, and my income didn't keep up with the expenses.
There's a point where we had a house with a big mortgage. My wife had just quit work because we were having our first child. We hit a point where we thought, this is going to be a problem. We've got too much house and not enough income.
I worked 3 jobs from 7 to 11 basically, all during the week, and then picked up anything I could on the weekend just so I could make sure I paid that mortgage.
I can remember sitting at the kitchen table and getting so mad and so frustrated and screaming at myself because it was just so frustrating. It was never to the point where I could actually get ahead.
We said, you know, this mortgage is going to be the biggest it will ever be. We'll never have a mortgage this big. When we'd move, we'd have a smaller mortgage. We'd pay more on the principal up front.
We just decided as a family, let's get this thing paid off as quick as possible, and so no one can take it from us.
So we started having conversations of what could we do to hold our lifestyle back a little bit and use that extra money towards the mortgage.
When I started listening to Dave, he started talking about a 15-year mortgage, and I thought, well, that sounds great, but it's probably twice as much. But it wasn't twice as much. It was only a couple $100 more per month to pay it off.
Even adding an extra $25 or an extra $50 over a long period of time really made a difference, and it really saved us a lot of money.
We paid extra payments on the principal that helped reduce the loan by several years.
Just anything we got extra bonuses or something that came in that was unexpected, would put that on the mortgage.
We didn't believe it at first. It's like when I wrote that last check, it was just like, okay, surely next month. The reality just didn't set in.
I went into my bank and wrote them a check for the whole amount of the remaining balance on my mortgage. I even had somebody take a picture because it was so momentous. It was such a great feeling.
Not having a mortgage and having a paid off house is fantastic. We're not going back into debt. We look at bigger houses sometimes, but it helps us stay content with the house that we've got to not have a mortgage.
It's just so much easier when your paycheck comes in and you go, okay, what do you want to do with this? It's not half of it goes away to pay the mortgage or debt. You know, you're in control of what you do, and you don't have to worry about somebody else telling you what to do with your money. You're in control, and you say, this is what we're going to do this month with our money.
I don't ever want to have a mortgage again. I don't ever want to have a car payment again. It's the most incredible feeling when you can look at your month and know the only bills you have to pay are utility bills.
We love having the freed up money to save for retirement, to give generously, or to do some fun things like just take the whole family on a surprise vacation. Those are things that we get to do now that we don't have a fourth of our income going out just to pay for our home.